Good evening and welcome to Spotlight on MX24 television. My name is Nwong Falong. This evening we're bringing you news that you will not be excited about, especially at a time when inflation has already hit 31% and people's disposable incomes have marginally reduced. Now, the PURC, which is the Public Utility Regulatory Commission, has announced new increments in utility tariffs. That was in a press conference earlier today. The Commission announced 27.15% for electricity tariff and 21.55% in water tariffs. The new increment, they say, is going to take effect from September 1, 2022. Don't forget also that the Ghana Water Company wanted to increase by 334%, while the ECG had proposed a 148% increase. We should also be looking at this announcement. Is the PURC being kind to Ghanaians with this increment, as it's not as high as was proposed earlier? How is this increase going to affect the quality of service that Ghanaians receive, and how business-friendly is this increment? We're going to be getting those answers shortly on Spotlight this evening from Dr. Eric Obute, who's a director at the Director for Research and Corporate Affairs at PURC. Also, Mr. Adumakuma Kusi Apia, He's West Africa's Regional Director for Consumer Unity and Trust Society at CATS International. We'll also be speaking with Benjamin Akoto, Head of Complaints, Consumer Protection Agency. We'll be right back with the details on this. Please stay with us. We're also going to open the phone line so you can join us. If you're watching us and you're watching online also, please leave comments. We will be taking your comments on our social media and especially on Facebook and Twitter. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Spotlight on MX24 television. Before we went on that break, I said that the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, which is PURC, has approved a 27.15% increase in electricity and 21.55% increase in water. These new increases are supposed to take effect on September 1, 2022. So lace your boots, get ready to pay more for both water and electricity. But this has been further broken down, and so I'm going to speak with our guest this evening. Dr. Eric, are you on the line? Okay, Dr. Eric is yet to join us, I see, but we'll be going to him in a moment as soon as he does. Mr. Adumakuma Kusi Apia, are you on the line, sir?
Yes, I'm on the line.
Thank you so much for joining us. Also, Mr. Benjamin Akoto, are you on the line?
Yes, I am on the line.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Right. Thank you, too, for joining. Dr. Obute, let me just come to you quickly. In fact, earlier this evening, we spoke with some Ghanaians on the streets, and they had a lot to say about this. But I'm going to come to them in a moment. Let me just go to Dr. Obute and find out the big question on a lot of people's minds. There had been previous proposals of certain percentages, which we do not see reflecting here. It's not as if Ghanaians are welcoming the increase. But exactly how did the Commission arrive at these rates? Mr. Adumakuma, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, I think I should.
Yes, I'm here.
I think I should come to you because I don't think I'm getting Mr. Obute there. But let me come to Mr. Adumakun first. Mr. Adumakun, when you look at these rates initially, what's your initial observation? Are these the rates that were anticipated? Were you anticipating a higher increase? Were you anticipating a lower increase? Were you anticipating that they maintain the rates?
Okay, thank you very much, and good evening to you and your viewers on MS23. For us, we had an expectation of a higher percentage increase in the tariffs. And so this morning we woke up and we saw, a friendly increase in tariffs, which I think that the utility regulator, PURC, was able to do a lot of work on the side of the consumer. So I think that this represents what economists will say the willingness to pay of the consumers, how much consumers are willing to pay.
Interesting. You're saying for you, it's much lower than anticipated. Do respective organizations have any role to play in determining these tariffs?
Please, can you repeat the question again?
Let's look at the PURC. Which other organizations have a role to play in determining these tariffs that we're seeing?
Okay, so PURC is given a mandate under their act, and the PURC board is made up of the executive secretary, the chair of the commission, and some state institutes, some agencies, some organizations like AGI, Association of Ghana Industries, the GUC, and other bodies, as well as a nominee from a presidential nominee. And all these the commission receives a proposal from the various utility players, and then the commission has to go around the country and solicit public comment into those proposals. Once they come back, then they translate the comments and they have received from industry and consumers with the proposal received by the utility companies. And also, they have to also balance it with the economic cost of delivering the services. So the commission has a very Herculean task in arriving at the tariff increase. I don't seem to work with the commission, neither do I speak on behalf of the commission, just that I know the process that the commission goes through in arriving at the tariffs that has recently been announced.
Right. So you are saying this is a very friendly increase. I'll go forward in a moment to find out if that's what everyone thinks. But let's take a look at the announcement earlier of these new tariffs, which was made by the Executive Director of PURC, Dr. Ishmael Aka. Okay, that should be playing shortly on your screen. So the announcement was done earlier today by the Public Utilities and Regulatory Commission, and we're just going to give you a quick listen to that announcement. Okay, my apologies there. I think we're having a few technical challenges, but let's come back in studio. Let's just proceed with this conversation, and let me speak to Mr. Benjamin Akoto, who's also on the phone with us. Mr. Benjamin Akoto is head of complaints at the Consumer Protection Agency. Mr. Akoto, when you listen to Mr. Dumakun, what he's telling us is that this is a friendly increase because the expectation was a much higher margin. Do you share his sentiments that this is a friendly increase?
I share his view because initially, for any commission to receive tariff proposals at over 300% and also into 120, the anticipation would be that at least a 30% or a 40% could be on the table. But I believe together with the technical committee and the other commissioners, they've taken other factors into consideration because, mind you, we are coming against a backdrop that over the past 5 years, there hasn't been any utility tariff adjustment. And in Ghana, sadly, when we talk of the adjustments, the prices are always going up and it never comes down. So with that mindset, we were also anticipating, just as Mr. Adomako mentioned, that the rates were going to be higher, but at least other factors also came into play, especially with transmission losses and the efforts they are also making in recovering some of their monies also in debts and all. So it's a welcoming thing that at least the anticipation and the prices, at least it could have been better, but considering what they presented and the deliberations and complaints from users, from producers and all, there had to be a middle way to solve the issue. So yes, it is friendly.
Interesting. I just wanted again to ask if it really is as friendly as it seems, because this is a time of some economic turmoil out there and people are not exactly having it easy with their incomes, not being able to command as much goods and services as it used to just a few short months ago. But before I come to that, let's go back and take the video of the announcement earlier today.
Cognizance of the cost of electricity, increased volume or cost of chemicals to treat water, raw water, the exchange rate, inflation, infrastructure expansion, operation and maintenance, and the financial viability of Ghana Water Company Limited. In balancing the interests of service providers, the financial viability of service providers, and the ability of consumers to pay, the PURC acknowledged the very economic variables that have occasioned the steep increase proposed by the service providers also affect consumers. The Commission admitted, however, that some level of increases in utility tariffs were inevitable if the nation was to avoid another doomsday and its attendant effects, including job losses. The Commission therefore decided, after rigorous analysis and engagement, to increase the end-user electricity tariff by 27.15%. The Commission therefore decided, after rigorous and objective analysis and extensive consultations, to increase the end-user electricity tariff by 27.15% and water by 21.55%, effective 1st September 2022.
Right, so that was the announcement earlier by Director of PURC, Dr. Ishmael Aka. And I'm just going to go speak to Dr. Eric Obute, who we're trying to catch earlier. He's Director, Research and Corporate Affairs at the PURC. Just the man we've been looking for this evening. Good evening, sir.
Hello, good evening.
Main question, how did the Commission arrive at these rates? We just spoke to some of our guests this evening. One of them, Mr. Adomako Kwesi, was saying this is a very friendly increment. Not many people agree with that. But how were these rates arrived at?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. And in arriving at this rate, the Commission actually took into consideration 3 factors, which border mainly on the macroeconomic indicators, the cost of the utilities, running the utilities itself, as well as the consumer interest. The macroeconomic indicators include the, as we all know, exchange rate, the inflationary rate, and the interest on loans that have been contracted. The utilities cost of operation, including the OPEX, which is what we call the operational expenses, salaries, and all the other things which go with the fuel, lubricants, chemicals that they use, as well as the consumer expectations and the consumer interest, which is the overriding factor. Because we all know that the system we live in now is a bit difficult. So in coming out of this, the Commission took into consideration all of these factors, including cost of living, before coming out with these tariffs.
Dr. Bute, when you say macroeconomic indicators such as interest rate and inflation were taking into consideration, one would argue that given inflation at 31% and interest rate so high, there should have been a lower increase in these figures.
Yes, the work of the Commission is twofold. The Commission is there and playing the role of a referee on the pitch. Now, as we cry for consumers, at the same time, we must also make sure that the utilities are financially viable to be able to produce the service that we all expect from them. There are two ways. Either we decide that we don't give the utilities anything at all, which will lead to a total collapse of the system, or we decide that we give them something to keep them running and keep the lights on and the water flowing. So to the best, the Commission decided to go for the latter option, which is to give them something to keep the lights on and to keep the system running and water flowing. So this is the best that we have done, considering the cost element, because we stripped off a number of costs. For instance, if government does, we call on-lend loans, government has contracted some loans and giving to the utilities. The utilities in their proposals have included those costs. Now, government says, take those costs out, I'll bear those costs.
Right.
I'll take care of those costs. So that effectively will bring the tariff down. Government is the shareholder 100% of the utilities. The utilities are supposed to pay dividends to government. Government says, okay, I'm not interested in the dividends. You keep the dividends and use it to alleviate the poverty and the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian. So that one also brings the tariff down. So a number of costs have been stripped off the tariff to make the tariff come down to the level at which we find it.
Right. So earlier, Mr. Aduma Kunkusiapia was saying that this is a friendly increase. Mr. Akoto also says the same thing. But how friendly is this increment, especially to businesses?
Well, in coming out of this tariff once again, the Commission has taken into consideration the fact that there's a lot of unemployment in our economy. Now, if we try to increase the tariffs for the industrial class, that will further deepen the woes of the industries and lead to job losses. So what the Commission has done is that try to alleviate the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian by at least lowering the tariffs of the industry, so at least the industries can have enough power to produce the items that they want to produce, and that there will be no job losses or job cuts. So for the bracket of hairdressers, for instance, the small scale and small to medium scale enterprises, the tariffs have seen a considerable dip. And even with the SLTs, the special load tariffs that we call them, they have also seen a dip as compared to what the residential class would pay. So this tariff is mostly for the industrial class or industrial customers to make industry up its game, so at least we can reduce the level of economic loss in the country.
Yeah, considering the initial proposals by both ECG and Ghana Water, which was way higher than this, some would say that this is a bit of a paltry increase. How is the ECG and Ghana Water taking this increment? Are they satisfied?
Well, the Commission, we initially wanted to do a 5-year multi-year tariff.
Okay.
And then we reduced it to a 3-year tariff. That already means that the 2 years investment that the utilities included in the proposal will also be chopped off. So it further reduces the level of cost that the utilities will be incurring. Now, whatever shortfall that will take place, the Commission will correct through the quarterly adjustment, which will be taking place on a very quarterly basis.
Dr. Bute, could this increment have been held off for a while? Is it possible that the increment could have been held off, especially since there's such a difficult situation out there?
Well, if we try to hold it off, as I told you earlier on, then there are two ways. If we try to hold it off, it means that the utilities will have to suffer, and all of us eventually will have to suffer. because the utilities will then have to fold up or shut down, or will return to the days of, in quote, doom so. And since we want to prevent that, so that we can keep the lights on and keep the businesses running, it is the best thing that the Commission can do at this particular time.
So is this just enough to maintain the service as it is, or should we be expecting a significant improvement in quality of service provided by both the ECG and Ghana Water?
Well, with what the Commission has given to them now, we expect to see some level of improvement.
Right.
Service, yes.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Obute. Dr. Obute is Director, Research and Corporate Affairs at the PURC. I still have Mr. Dumaku Kusi on the line. I still also have Mr. Benjamin Akoto. But let me go back to Mr. Benjamin Akoto because I wanted to find out from him to what extent can we call this friendly when we know that a lot of people really wish for this to have been lower?
To wish for the tariff to have been lower than what we have now would also mean that the service providers are really going to be in serious problem, especially with generation and distribution, because there are other factors that I believe they should also pay attention to. Mr. Adumapo and myself, we've been in several meetings with them, and we know, for example, that post-production losses for ECG still stands above 30%. And for water wastage, we can all attest, even during the live reading of the new adjustment, there were complaints right there. For example, I would just cite a very simple example. Senegal, for example, has been able to reduce their post-production losses, transmission losses, to less than 8%. Ours still hangs around 30%. So it means there are other things that the service providers could do to also make the system more effective. But then again, if we also want to just be mindful that the rate should always come down, bear in mind, just as I mentioned earlier, we've had free water and free electricity for some time, and it's been 5 years since there's been any major adjustment, especially with prices going up. Well, there is also the question of the non-tariff adjustments that went up a little earlier in the year that people did not really pay attention to. Those were in connection with new service lines and line extensions and all. Those increments were up to 300% for some, but consumers never really paid attention to it. The last time I was on your network with opposing views, that issue came up, but it couldn't properly be addressed because they were also in negotiations and other things. So if we always want to, the consumer or us, an agency, we are not against fair pricing. We believe the consumer should also be able to pay realistic prices for the services, whilst making sure that the service providers also make sure that they improve the efficiency in the service delivery. So that is where we stand. Service delivery should be efficient, whilst the consumer also pays realistic prices for the services that we receive. Electricity cannot be.
One of the reasons PRC gives is that this was unavoidable in order to keep the lights on and to avoid doom saw. But looking at the losses that you have mentioned, isn't it easier to first reduce the losses before this increment?
Well, it is also part. Just as I mentioned, I rather would say that I love the management style of the new MD, especially for ECG, because once he took office, he's made it clear that electricity cannot be free. He's actually doing moratorium for people who have issues with service delivery to report and to be rectified. And for other areas that ordinarily wouldn't want to pay electricity, you know how he's handling all those issues. So electricity cannot continue to be free or subsidized in the manner that has been handled over the years. For example, I also remember when the executive secretary was giving the brief, he even quoted the dollar rate used for the transaction as 7.5. But you and I know very well that this rate is not even applicable if a new calculation should be done today. And the fear rather would be that the quarterly adjustment that they have proposed, they're going to resume working on. That is where my fear possibly is, that for every other quarter, there will be a slight adjustment. That is my fear. But of course, if the other indicators, as he mentioned, comes down, then we could be looking at a different ballgame altogether.
Right, thank you so much. If you're watching us, especially on social media, our Facebook handle is at MX24 Television. Leave your comments beneath the video streaming, and we will be reading them out here on the program. You can also call our phone lines, which is 020-4738 481. That's 020-4738-481 or 0550-331511. Those are our phone lines. Join the conversation there. Let me go back to our guest and speak to Mr. Adumaku Kusi, who we spoke to earlier. Mr. Adumaku, are you still there?
Yes, please, I'm here.
Yes, I'm still on the tangent that before we increase tariffs, shouldn't we first be looking at other ways of increasing profitability? Which means, I mean, people say if you have a leaking basket, you don't put more water into the basket to maintain a certain level. What you rather do is that you fix the leak. And have we fixed the leak here?
I think that is a very good question, but we must also be very fair and frank with the providers. We know that the world has changed. Things are moving in a way that they never anticipated. They have made some level of progress in terms of reducing their technical losses, and they still have a long way to go. Perhaps that could even be why the PURC did not even grant them substantial, increase in tariffs. And I'm very sure that the PURC performance monitoring standard that they have set for the utility companies between now and the next time they go for a tariff adjustment, I mean, by that time, I'm sure that they would have made they would have made enough progress. But also, we also need to, help the utility companies to reduce the losses that is related in the whole country. When you see that your friend or your neighbor has done illegal connection, first you talk to your neighbor that, look, if you don't rectify it, I will call the ECG or the police to come and arrest you. We've seen all that is going on in the society, and everybody has kept quiet. And eventually, if you do not talk about it, at the end of the day, all those things will be piled up as a non-performing debt, and that you and I will pay. So if we all Ghanaians are to collaborate and we seize anything bad and we are to report it, I'm very sure that could also make things, could help us get cheaper tariffs, because there are a lot of Ghanaians are doing what you call free ride. They are not paying utility tariffs, and we know them, and we are not reporting them. So if we were to do that, I'm very sure that the next tariff that will come, we might even get about 3 or 4%, because everybody is paying his or her fair share of the tariffs.
Let me go back to the question of quality. When we're talking about seeing an improvement in the quality of service, what areas would you be expecting an improvement in?
Well, I think quality is still an issue, but at least UCG largely has done very well with regards to how they are able to respond to outages. In the past, outages could go about days. Now, it's been minutes, hours, they are able to resolve those outages. And we still need to see more in terms of how they respond to consumer complaints. Because recently, a friend requested for a meter, and it took him more than 2 years before he got a new meter. These are some of the things that the ECG has to do more, to also to replace the old meters, so that people who are using the electricity will be able to, will not be overbilled or underbilled.
Interesting response there from Mr. Adumaku Kusi from CATS International. I'll go back to Zoom, where I have Mr. Benjamin Akoto, Head of Complaints at the Consumer Protection agency. If you listen to Mr. Kwesi Appiah, one of the things he mentioned, one of the issues, especially at ECG, is the delay in getting meters. What causes this delay?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
think
can
the
hear you
delay
now.
their own procedural stuff that happens at ECG, because I believe once the application is accepted by ECG, they assign people, especially from the Energy Commission, to also check on a few things with the location. Then the necessary things are done. But just as you mentioned, been a problem for some time.
Okay, I think I'm having issues with your line, so I'm going to go back to Mr. Kwesi Appiah just until we stabilize your line. Mr. Kwesi Appiah, if you're there, if you can just help me out. One of the questions I have here...
After the show and give me.
Sorry, Mr. Akoto, is that you?
Yes, that's
okay. Your line froze over there, but please proceed.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we received similar complaints, especially out of Accra, that meters were scarce. Directly or indirectly, once that scarcity is created, it also opens up for other people to, take advantage of the situation and milk the system because they are not readily available. But I believe ECG has taken notice. So the last time I inquired, I was told that they imported a large chunk of meters, so this thing will be a thing of the past. So hopefully, we just hope they can solve this issue. But then again, let me be quick to add this, that consumers should also be very interested in understanding the components and especially on the meters, because most of these complaints and other things that tend to bring hot and heated debates between consumers and service providers has to do with the basic understanding on the various components they find on the meter. For example, somebody has used electricity for many years but do not even understand the actual usage as is captured on the meter. So these things, people have to understand that once it's a service that you readily pay for, you should understand so you don't get offended or feel in a way that you are being cheated, as it's happening somewhere that I don't want to mention now. So those are some of the factors.
Right, Mr. Okoto, let me just mention the phone lines there again for our viewers. And if you want to join in the conversation, that's 02047 38481. These are the phone lines to call, 0204 738481. And the other phone line is 0550 331511. 0550 331511. And I'm just going to quickly go back to speak to Mr. Akoto. Now, one of the questions I have here is they say that if the rise in salaries for workers in the country is as meager as 15%, why would utility bills be up over 20%?
I would say that I do not hold brief for the PURC or for the Electricity Company of Ghana. But just as I mentioned, we also believe that as consumers, we should pay realistic prices. Okay, being realistic also means that you keep them in business because we know the cost of production, even the cost of importation. As I mentioned earlier, when the executive secretary was giving the new announcement, he even pegged the dollar rate at 7.5. But today, those figures are irrelevant to the calculations. Okay, so we have to be realistic. Mr. Adomako mentioned earlier the same thing that if we want to keep them in business, we are not holding brief for any organization, but as consumers, we know what goes into the power generation, transmission, the replacement of the maintenance and all that, and the capital intensity of the investments we put in to make sure that our lights are on. So if we need the lights on, then we should also pay realistic prices, and I think that is fair.
Interesting there. There's also another comment here that says, in the midst of economic challenges, Ghanaian leaders are rather increasing tariffs. Where do you expect citizens to get the money amidst the challenges? Or is there no economic challenge? Also, we are still struggling to pay at the current rate. Now, if we can't keep up, you have given us a reason for illegal connections. Okay, that's quite a dicey one. The illegal connections also rob the states of needed payment for their services that they are rendering to you. But I'd prefer for Mr. Adumaku to take that. When we increase these tariffs above what consumers are expecting, yes, I know it's not as high as anticipated, but aren't we, in a way, pushing people to go into illegal connections? I'll come to you in a moment to answer that. I have someone on the line from Asante Mampong. Good evening. Your name?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Moses Kunja.
Right, Moses. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Please, I want to ask this question. Government is always saying things are hard, things are hard, things are hard all the time. So what at all is the government doing to cushion its citizenry? Because if you look at it, COVID-19 came, and government have introduced something we call COVID-19 levy on most of its services. There is this 15% increment in all government services, talking about DVLE and all that, health insurance and all that. There's this 15% increment. So, and now, public sector workers are calling for COLA. Government has agreed to give them 15% of that COLA. And only today we are hearing that there's going to be increased utility tariff by 27 and 21% respectively. So the question I'm asking is, what at all is the government doing? Its citizenry. Thank you.
I hear you, Moses. I'm not. Let me push that question to Mr. Dumako. Although you're not government, but can you attempt to say something to Moses? Because Moses is asking, yes, times are hard, but times are hard for the citizens. So if government keeps taking from the citizens in the name of times are hard, what is there for the, how is government helping out the citizen? Because if it's hard for government, it's even harder for the citizen. So where is the citizen going to be finding all these monies to be giving out all around?
Okay. So thank you very much. I think we must understand that government role in the economy is limited. Maybe after independence, we had the Akusumo and everything was kind of hydroelectric electricity. But today we are using crude oil, gas, and other things that the utility companies have to buy at the market prevailing prices. So if consumers decide that it is high, and so we are not willing to pay, what it means is that the utility companies will not have the resources to buy those inputs, and they will go back to do so this, and there will be no electricity. Now, if there's no electricity, you may have to go and buy, if you have a generator, you may have to buy generator and a fuel or candle. And let me tell you that the cost of even buying a candle for a night is more expensive than this proposed tariff. So we need to choose the lower of the evil. Do you get it? The times are hard in the economy, and government is unfortunately unable to be able to even add up beyond the 15%. Every government wishes it could even increase salaries by 80%. I mean, that would even be a political plan for you. But then its economic ramification will be so unbearable to the economy in the long run. And so we need to understand that there are constraints, and those constraints are justified. I mean, government needs to work within those constraints and be able to make an optimized decision in the midst of all these challenges. So things are hard. Salaries will not go up. Fuel prices are going up. Utility prices are going up. But if we decide to keep even fuel prices low in the country, what will mean is that there will be the BDCs will not be able to get money to import fuel, and there will be no fuel in the cars, and the whole country will grind to a halt. That means that food will not move from the rural area to the city centers, and people are going to die. So I would rather prefer to have electricity and be able to pay for it. I rather prefer to have the fuel to pay for it, though it may be slightly higher. And these challenges that countries go through do not last forever. It may be an ephemeral, a transitory thing that are passing. That we are very hopeful that in a few months, some of these short-term imbalances will be a thing of the past.
Hey, Dr. Kwesi, Mr. Kwesi Appiah, you say it doesn't last forever, but will they ever go down? I'll come back to you. I have Israel on the line from Kumasi. Israel, let me hear you.
Madam, good evening once again.
Yes.
Hello.
We're listening.
Yeah, I want to ask the ECG workers. I've witnessed to most cases, like the residents, like the houses ECG people are occupying.
Right.
The bills over there are very down. And I want to ask them, aside electrical or engineers, who knows how to do illegal connections? So some way, somehow, they are also part of that, and we should question them. And
but do we is this speculation or is it fact, Israel? Do we know for sure that the ECG workers have lower tariffs?
Yeah, it's fact. It's fact. I've witnessed that for, let's say, for myself. I've seen a lot, like where I'm living right now.
Where do you live?
Kumasi.
Which part of Kumasi is this?
Efidiase.
Sorry?
Efidiase.
Efidiase. We are going to be coming there to check the ECG workers.
Yes.
The ECG workers over there.
For me, myself, where I'm living right now, I pay 4 points. 4 points. Only 4 points. I pay almost 72 cedis.
Right.
The least I've paid is 50 cedis. But you can check the ECG people around Efidiase here, where they are paying a whole house. They are paying no less. They are paying 50 cedis, 100 cedis, and it don't make sense.
I see.
The whole house.
Israel.
The whole house. Yes, madam.
We are grateful that you've reported the ECG workers in Efidiase.
They are also part of the illegal connections. They should point them themselves and then.
We hear you. I'll personally make it my job to escalate this matter and look into it. But let me speak to Benjamin Akoto. I'll come back to you, Mr. Kwesi Appiah, because this is more for a customer complaint. I think Mr. Akoto can best address this.
Yes, as he mentioned earlier, let me start from this point, that using electricity or any of the services, you should know that it is more of a pay-as-you-use service. Okay, there are other processes, or let's say there are other gadgets or systems that the whole current runs through before you can use electricity. I'll give you a perfect example. In our office, at the offices of the Consumer Protection Agency, we are not paying, especially for electricity, we are not paying more than 50 in a month. Ask me why. Because we conscious effort to conserve energy when we don't have the need for it. You understand?
Yeah.
So once you leave your refrigerators on, you leave your air conditions on, you leave your TVs and your other gadgets on, even when they are not in use, and you come back to make such, complaints, then it also boils down to a lifestyle usage, as we mentioned earlier. So sometimes consumers should also make that conscious effort. If for any other reason you believe you are not fairly being meted, okay, you have the right as a consumer to walk to ECD to say, hey, I think something is wrong with my meter, come check it out. If possible, request for a change, and it's in your right to do that. But to say or to encourage anybody to do anything illegal, it's more of stealing and it's against the law.
Right.
And I'm glad that the new MD for electricity company is making every effort. He's actually giving the opportunity for whoever has a problem to come report to the office. And after some time, and they go after these illegal connections, nobody will feel sorry for them.
Right. ECG, if you're listening, you should check out the ECG workers and their homes in Efidiase, in Kumasi, to cross-check Israel's claim and make sure that there's no illegal connection in their homes, unless, of course, you have directly given them discounts on the tariffs that they pay. Let me go to the line. We have a caller. Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening, madam.
Your name and where you're calling from, please?
Yes, my name is Joe. I'm calling from Kuboka.
Sorry, calling from?
Yes, I want to raise up the point that the government and the other agencies are not being fair with workers.
Right.
They have given the workers 15% increase. They are now charging water and electricity at 27 and what the other person. They should also remember that out of our own salaries, we pay our rent. We are now paying these high tariffs. What is left for us to depend on? If the government does not take that and watch things properly, I don't think they are doing us a good favor, because we are getting too exhausted from the little salaries they are giving us.
Right, right. I think I get the full grasp of what you're trying to say. And I mentioned it earlier, but if you just want to speak to it again, Mr. Akoto, I mean, this whole issue of increase it, COLA was given for 15%, and now there's an increase that literally erodes the gains of COLA.
I think these issues are for organized labor, and for the various associations or the groupings within the TUC to address for their members. Okay, but just as I mentioned, realistically, I believe the rates that have been approved, it's fair, and as much as possible, we should also be looking at conserving energy, okay, because that's one side that is very dear to my heart, conservation of energy, being that if for any reason you feel you are overusing, or let me use that term, if you feel you are overusing the electricity, or the usage is not fair to you, find a professional, let them go through the system and be sure that indeed there are no leakages, anywhere, even for water and for electricity, because others are doing it, so it can certainly be done. If for any reason you have connections that are not right, it also aids in electricity, going waste within your system. But of course, you still pay for it.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Akutu. I'm going back to the line. I have another caller. Good evening. Your name, please?
Good evening. Please, I'm James, calling from Kentampo.
Right. Let's hear you.
Please, thank you very much. Looking at the latest increase in the utility tariff, I think it is useless that the 15% given by the government is useless.
Right.
I think the public sector workers should go to the table again.
Right. Yes. Thank you for that input there. It seems this is of particular interest to a lot of people, because this is the second caller. We also had that comment online about 15% COLA versus these higher than that percentage increase. Let me come back here to Benjamin. Benjamin, we've had a lot of complaints from the people. What's the best approach? What do you think should be the reaction from people towards these increases that we're seeing?
First and foremost, I believe if your usage is too much, or you have problems with consumption, it's about one, lifestyle adjustment, trying to save energy when it's not needed. That is number one, because utilities, as it's mentioned, is a pay-as-you-go system. If you don't use it, don't pay for it, be it on the prepaid system or on the postpaid system, it is still a pay-as-you-go system. So once you don't have need for, let's try to conserve energy. That is one. And two, because of these new tariffs and all, people's income, just as been mentioned several times on this show, is lower. So what happens? The other factors as they considered, as in the inflationary figures and all that, with proper management, I believe these figures can also come down. And yet again, efficiency improvement in the whole system, as in checking on the post-production
Benjamin,
losses,
my apologies. Let me just cut you there. I'll come back to you to continue with the same question. But I've had a caller on the line waiting. Let me just take what he has to say. And that would be the last call, please. My apologies. Good evening, please.
Good evening, madam.
Yes, please. Let's hear you.
My name is Emmanuel, calling from Kentampo, South Jima. Please, the man on the Zoom, what he say, when you get to their office, is a different issue. is speaking as if when you get to their office for them to come and check your meters and come and check other issues for you, they will just come on a slighter note. We have complained to them for more than 3 years now. The way our light bill has been coming.
You mean ECG?
Yeah, ECG.
Okay.
And the lights out as if they on and off the light like, yes, like how many times they want in a day. So we don't know the reason why they have increased the utility bills and those things. It can pass 1 week, then you have even a single drop of water from your tap. So why are they increasing these things? Is it because of the 15% that they want to collect their money back or what?
Thank you so much.
It's not good. They should find better ways.
Thank you.
We don't know what to say again.
Thank you. I should just mention that none of our guests is from ECG, so I believe there's a misdirection of anger here. But I'm sure they will still help us by speaking to some of these issues, and we're grateful for that. So I'll come back to Benjamin Akoto if you can just land.
Okay, I'll just touch on the three main things that I spoke about earlier. The food production losses, there should be improvement within the system to cut down on the post-production losses. And two, every user of electricity should pay the right tariff. Electricity is not free. Taking electricity for free is stealing. You should take conscious effort to pay for your utilities. And thirdly, the revenue collection activities of the service providers should be intensified. Because there are some areas, I have personally received complaints from certain areas that for over 2-3 years, there hasn't been any effort to retrieve revenue from those areas. And they are still on the grid consuming electricity. So I believe with some of these issues, once they are addressed, the system will become better for all of us.
Thank you, Benjamin Akoto. Let me go back to Mr. Dumakun Kusi-Appiah. I also wanted him to just touch on, I think one of the concerns is how well the ECG will adhere to this promise of improvement in service quality. How do we hold them to the task?
Of course, anytime ECG goes to PRC to ask for increase, it tells PRC that we'll do A, B, C, and D on service improvement. But sometimes PRC sitting at their office in the Ridge, Accra, or the regional offices may not know what is going on until we, the consumers, also report certain things. So if you think that ECG is not performing to your expectation, you also have the right to, and PRC would investigate. And if it is found out that ECG inaction or action has caused you a loss, the commission is under the law, can also get you some compensation. So commission should also not only engage with ECG, but they should also continue to engage with the PRC, because PRC is the umpire in this game.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dumakun Kusi-Appiah, who is the West Africa Regional Director for Consumer Unity and Trust at CATS International. We also spoke with Benjamin Akoto, who is Head of Complaints at Consumer Protection Agency. This evening, we've been looking at the increase in tariffs and how it's going to affect Ghanaians. We hope that we've been able to bring you sufficient answers to your questions, but keep your questions coming on our social media. We'll continue to speak to the issues. We also spoke earlier with Dr. Eric Obute, who is Director for Research and Corporate Affairs at the PURC. So to you, our viewer, especially those who called in, we're very grateful for your time. And I say that on behalf of everyone here at MX24 Television. See you same time Wednesday, 5 p.m. My name is Nwong Falong. Good evening.